Right, folks, good afternoon. It's my job to keep an eye on the way things are developing within regulation and hopefully the future of the industry in the medium term, which is going to make things, hopefully, a lot easier for us to do a lot more interesting stuff with. So I'm going to take a few minutes of your time to talk about where the regulations are going in the medium term. And the aim of all this is that eventually, within a few years, routinely, we should be able to fly our drones BVLOS at scale, i.e. lots of people doing this, and to keep it safe and to still be in shared airspace with the general aviation and air transport community. That's the plan. If you think about what needs to happen for that to be a safe way to do business, we need pilots that are good enough. We need drones that are reliable enough so that they're not going to go haywire or fall out of the sky. We need shared airspace, which is flexible enough for us to do our job, but is also maintaining the correct levels of safety. And we need processes for the application, approval and assurance, which are reliable. So the aim of all this is to reduce the level of risk to that which is currently enjoyed by commercial aviation, which would be a serious injury or death once in every million flying hours, which is quite a lot. It's very safe. We're the safest flying people in the world. Last person killed in a UK airliner, I think, was the Kegworth crash in 1989. And when you think that there are many hundreds of flights going around the UK every single day, we're actually very, very safe at this. And the CAA's aspiration is that we do the same with drones. At the moment, they have stated that they think a drone fails about once per 1,000 flight hours. So we need to improve safety by a factor of 1,000 or by 1,000 times in order to achieve this. So luckily, the Department for Transport and through them the CAA, they have a plan. And here it is. So the CAA issued a consultation document in March last year. I'm very pleased to say we contributed to it and they listened to it. And in response to it, they have proposed that we have 4 levels going forward of remote pilot competence. That's what RPC means. They published the draft acceptable means of compliance as a more formal way of proposing this. And again, invited comment on that as the second part of the consultation. Our view was that levels 1 and 2 were absolutely fine and fit for purpose. I'll define those a little bit more in a second. But that we needed more information about their proposals for the more advanced flying with pilots qualified to RPC level 3 and 4 before we would be able to comment. And we await the final acceptable means of compliance to enable us to write syllabi and course content. And we expect to have those by the end of 2024. We'll see. It should be imminent. They should be coming. And regardless, if it takes a few more months, at least we're going along the right path. And it'll formalise pilot training along the following sort of lines. So RPC1 will be approximately equivalent to your current GVC. I'm guessing most of you here are operating under an operating authority, operating authorization under a GVC. And I have to say that these proposals don't cover the open category at all. We're only talking about the specific and possibly the certified category later on in time. RPC level 2 will cover BVLOS with visual mitigation and possibly in atypical airspace as well. I will define atypical airspace as, at the moment, airspace where we would not expect manned aviation to be encountered. If you think about that, it's probably along a line feature, possibly along some national infrastructure, possibly around buildings where you wouldn't expect people to be flying a helicopter or a light aircraft or commercial aircraft. So at the moment, they say that that's probably going to be within 15 metres of a line feature or within 30 metres of a building. Again, that will open up the market. I'll talk a little bit more about the application of atypical airspace shortly. To enter the course for level 2, they expect you to have 50 hours experience logged as a level 1 pilot. And key to these proposals is that in order to enter the level 2 course, you have to have a level 1 certificate. And at the moment, their insistence is that a GVC certificate will not be sufficient. We are not sure about the availability or the content of any crossover courses between GVC and level 1. What we do know is that the proposed syllabus for level 1 is actually a little bit less than the syllabus for GVC, because under the GVC course we'll cover some operator responsibilities with you about the content of an ops manual and about what accountable managers have to do. That will be taken away from level 1 training. It does lead the question then, where are we going to get the future accountable managers from if none of the operating procedures training is involved in pilot training? But we'll see where they go with that. That's the secondary question. So the course will be 5 hours practical training, one-on-one practical flying training, of which 2 hours may be in a simulator. Our interpretation of that is that the simulator requirements are far too stringent to actually make it worthwhile for us to invest in a simulator. It's quite easy to simulate a drone. It's actually quite difficult to simulate a drone with active weather, with the correct handset for the particular system you're using, with the correct flight characteristics, camera capabilities for the system you're using. So we suspect that's going to be a little bit beyond us. So I suspect that there won't be too many people at the level 1 and level 2 who'll be using simulators. RPC 3 and 4, the aim of that will be to qualify pilots who will be authorised to fly their drones beyond visual line of sight, where no one can see it, in airspace shared with manned aircraft. So level 3 is probably going to be where there's general aviation around. Level 4 would be where you would expect to have airliners, commercial air transport, very frequently encountered. So that would be around the larger airports in probably what we now call Cat D airspace, around Manchester, Leeds, Bradford, that kind of thing. So that's the vision for remote pilot competence. And as I said earlier, you won't be able to attain the higher levels unless you have attained the level below it. So one of the next requirements that we talked about was having drones that we know are reliable. And not only that we believe are reliable, that we can measure their reliability, because this is all about turning, at the moment, what we think are sort of risk objectives into quantifiable, measurable levels of risk. And we'll talk a little bit more about the process of that shortly. They aim to establish standards of flight worthiness to provide assurance on the performance of UAS, and these again will be published by the end of 2024. Other requirements, apologies for that being cut off at the top. As a way of enabling BVLOS, there's also work being done on electronic conspicuity. You may well have heard of ADS-B, where a little box on your aeroplane goes, my name's Bert, I'm an aeroplane, I'm here, I'm at this speed, I'm heading in this direction. And then all the other aircraft with the same bit of kit go, oh, Bert's over there. So they tell the pilot, and the pilot can steer his aircraft away from Bert the drone. That's great. The next step for that would be automatic detect and avoid. So an aircraft in the air will see another drone, and it will be able to make its own decisions about what it's going to do about it. And that's getting from automatic flight, where a drone automatically does do what we tell it, to autonomous flight, where it's also able to make its own decisions. We shall see. You may well have heard the term atypical airspace, and a lot of people think this is the great enabler that will make things so much easier for all of us because you can do what you want in atypical airspace. That's actually a little bit of a misconception. As I said, the definition of atypical airspace is where you're very unlikely to meet a manned aircraft, and therefore there will be very little air risk of collision when you do so. And at the moment, the parameters the CAA have suggested are within 15 meters of a line feature or within 30 meters of a building. It still has to be included in an operating safety case, and it's only available as a mitigation. So if you want to do something funky with your drone, you can say, I'm only going to do it in atypical airspace. It's up to you to define what the atypical airspace is. And then the inspector at the moment may well say, yeah, okay, you're very unlikely to meet another aircraft there, so I'm going to be happy with that as a mitigation. But it will still require an operating safety case. In terms of the assurance of all of this and the application process, you may well have heard of the Specific Operating Risk Assurance, which is SORA. It's a method of identifying and hopefully quantifying to some extent, although not exactly, the level of risk. If you quantify your level of risk, you can then identify what safety factors are required to mitigate that risk. So you can come up with a plan. The aim was that it should be, again, adopted by the end of 2024. We know there's a little bit of a delay at that. It's based on, the UK SORA is based on the JARUS SORA. The JARUS is the Joint Authorities for Rulemaking of Unmanned Air Systems. Because of our membership of the EU, we had to join EASA. We need a different SORA because our flight regulations are different. I'm a commercial pilot as well. EU law says you're not allowed to fly your commercial aircraft or your manned aircraft below 500 feet. In the UK, under certain circumstances, you are. And guess where we fly? It's below 500 feet. Generally, we don't. But as long as you're flying more than 500 feet from a vehicle, person, building, or structure, or a vessel, you can fly your aircraft over a moor in Scotland really at whatever height you want. So therefore you might meet a drone while you're doing that. So that's why the UK needs a slightly different SORA. So the way SORA works, it doesn't promise BVLOS ops on its own. It's a way of quantifying the risk of whatever you want to do. And that may well not be BVLOS. It might be some other activity that you want to do with your drone. But it's a methodology of quantifying the total risk. And you do that by getting the ground risk, i.e. how likely is the drone to whack someone on the head and kill them. And you add that to the air risk, how likely is the drone to hit a manned aircraft, and that gives you a total risk. And is that then tolerable? Would a reasonable person think that that risk was tolerable for the operation? So as I've said, you identify the ground risk. A lot of that's going to be based on population density. We have decent ordnance survey data for each grid square, each 1 kilometre grid square in the UK, about population density. And I'm sure you can work out that if you want to fly your 100 kilogram drone over to Moorland in Scotland, that's an awful lot safer because there's much less chance of it hitting someone in the event of a failure than if you want to fly it down Oxford Street. You then identify the air risk, and that'll be based on the density of the air traffic around you. Again, flying over a remote area away from all airfields is going to be a lot less risky than flying it close to a major international airport where there are manned and populated airliners. You look up a table from ground risk and air risk, and that will give you the required specific assurance integrity level. So that's your target. Your SAIL will be your target. And the higher the SAIL is, the more robust your mitigations need to be. So it's all very logical. It's a little bit involved, but at least there is logic and clarity behind it. Once you get your SAIL number, that will tell you which, if any, of the 24 operating safety objectives you need to meet, and also how robustly you need to meet them. So, for instance, we know that we're not supposed to fly our drones beyond visual line of sight. So in the open category, we have all passed our flyer ID, so we have been told, don't fly your drone beyond visual line of sight. That's a very low robustness of the mitigation. The same mitigation in the specific category is written into your ops manual, and it says, you will not fly your drone. Pilots are not to fly their drone more than 500 meters, so it's written in an ops manual, and we can show the CAA that it's in our ops manual. We're unlikely to forget it. So that's a more robust way of instigating the mitigation. Even more robust then is if the accountable manager or maybe the CAA come along and watch you do it. So that's just to give you an idea of the different levels of robustness for any particular mitigation. The higher the SAIL number you have, the more safety objectives you will have to meet. That might be a parachute. That might be use an aircraft that will maintain flight in the event of a motor or propeller failure. So then you're looking at a hexacopter, that kind of thing. But the higher the SAIL number, the more operation safety objectives assurance you will have to have. So the more dangerous it is, the more supervision you can expect to have and the more involved your operating safety case will have to be. We will be developing, or the industry will be developing, UAS suitable for flight worthiness testing. There are also BVLOS trials being conducted in the CAA BVLOS sandbox. We have no knowledge of that because it's like Fight Club. The first rule of sandbox is you don't talk about the sandbox. We know that there are lots of OEMs and fairly high-level operators who are working in the sandbox to develop ways of using the drone's BVLOS. And like the motor industry, lots of stuff falls from Formula One. Lots of stuff will presumably fall from the sandbox down to the kind of more routine operations side of the industry. It's possible that we will also get some new predefined risk assessments. We need to be careful what we wish for. A lot of people at the moment online, and the CAA are getting a bit of a kicking online at the minute. A lot of people are saying, oh, EASA have bucket loads of PDRAs. Why can't we? And it's a fair question, but we should be careful because every single European PDRA is more restrictive than the UK PDRA 01. For instance, I don't believe that any PDRA in Europe will allow you to fly in the overhead of uninvolved people. And we can imagine that that's actually quite a major concession for us, that you can fly your drone down Oxford Street if you want, as long as it's more than 50 meters above people and you minimize the time in the overhead. You may have heard of DISCO. It's the digitization process for applying. If any of you have done an ops manual renewal recently, you'll have just done all the drop-down menus, forwarded your ops manual, and 20 minutes later, you'll have got your operational authorization. The vision is that that will be available for SORA too. So you'll be able to put in what drone you're flying, what its SAIL number is, where you want to fly it, what the airspace is like, how far you're going to want to fly it, and you'll get presumably a nice hole-punched card that says you need to fly this level of SAIL drone, because drones will have a SAIL number, and you need to have these levels of operating safety objectives. And if you do that, we will authorize you to do it. So that's the way it should all tie together. 3.8 million quid was spent on DISCO so far. It's a government IT project that actually seems to be on time, which is nice, refreshing, isn't it? So there, I've talked about DISCO. It's hopefully going to be drop down, fill in, an instant approval for your operating safety case. But do bear in mind that you will still have to write an operating safety case, because the OSC, if any of you have put one in, it's a tortuous process. The end product of it is that the CAA are happy with what you have written in your ops manual. We shouldn't lose sight of the fact that the ops manual is there for your remote pilot to pick up and read and know what they're supposed to be doing. That's the actual purpose of the operations manual. So we will need to produce the 3 volumes of the OSC. I'm hoping it's going to be a little bit less than the couple of 100 pages you need to do at the moment. Eventually, we're going to get here, maybe not in 2027, but the target is that by the end of, or by the start of 2027, we should be doing routine BVLOS ops in shared airspace.